smaller number of big enemies is better than a large number of small enemies. And one of the biggest things that this refers to is initiative. Because sometimes, especially with Shadowrun, if you're rolling for 7 or 8 people, it takes a while just to get through one pass. There was a game I played when I first got onto the hub. We did, I think, something like 1 second of action in the game took us 2 hours to get through. Because it was just there were so many people. And one person would take their action, and the next person would take their action, and then they had questions, and then that person had to go. And he tracked the initiative of every single enemy that we had, and all of them went at different locations. And it just became a real drag for what little action happened. So sometimes it's easier just to say either, like, there's 2 different ways that you can do this. The first off is either you can completely negate a whole bunch of people and go with just 2 or 3 really powerful people. And that can provide a challenge for a really well-built party. Even a pickup party like we do here, 2 or 3 prime level runners, especially combat-oriented runners, will create a very big challenge for a group of not-so-combat-oriented. And they may have to think laterally to get out of it. The other thing you can do is, instead of rolling all of the people individually, group them into small groups and roll them as groups. Say you have a pack of like 15 kobolds coming in and fighting. Instead of rolling 15 different initiatives, group them into 3 groups of 5 and have each of those groups move differently. Now, that's still a lot of kobolds to happen, so you want to try and make sure that you're not overwhelming a particular character with 5 kobolds, but it may be easier to deal with on an initiative scale to roll a whole bunch of people at once, or treat them as a swarm. If you're a large number of enemies means more rolls, more time spent that the player is idle, and idle usually means bored. You don't want to bore your players. There might be times when they're out of the limelight, but most of the time you want to try to make sure that they're involved in what's going on. The second one, pulling punches, is perfectly fine. There are a lot of DMs out there that do not like pulling punches, but on the other hand, there are a lot of people that do it too much. Like, you're almost scared to hit your players. Like, they're not fragile. They understand what they're getting into. But sometimes if the dragon comes in and blows the whole party away with their fire breath, you might want to let a few points of that slide. And let them get back up and hit back. Because if they all die from the first breath, that's not a very well-designed encounter. I actually almost had that happen on a D&D game not too long ago. And that was, as a player, that was really disappointing. Because we almost felt railroaded into the match. And then when it happened, it's like we almost all died. And of course, every single one of us got pissed off. It's like, really? We didn't even want to do this encounter. And now we almost died because you made us do this encounter. So it's a very, very, very good way to make sure your players are pissed at you if you do that. Male lions pretend to be hurt when playing with their cubs to encourage them. Every now and then, it's okay to do the same thing. It feels so much better than to kill something outright than to know that you spared them out of pity. If you do pull punches, don't let them know you did it. There's nothing that takes the wind out of people's sails more to know than they didn't earn the victory that they had. Especially against a big enemy. If you're facing off against a stone golem, he only has, and the barbarian hits for 33 points of damage, right? And there's 2 left. And everybody's like, yeah, it's dead, we're getting ready to. And you know that stone golem is going to destroy somebody their next turn. You might just want to let those 2 points fall off and just say he's dead. Because there's no point for you as a DM, and there's no point for them as the player to continue fighting. At that point, it's just like, oh, it's a technicality. He technically has 2 points left. Everybody hates technicalities. So again, read your table though. If they don't deserve the victory almost, then don't let them have it. Make them work for it. But if they're all beaten and battered and bleeding, and they don't have any health potions left, and if this stone golem goes, he's gonna fuck somebody's shit up. I'd let the 2 points fall off and just kill it. Be done with it. Let everybody have a good time. Don't make it seem like you're trying to, pour more on them than it's worth. Keep consistency with your encounters. Now, this is one of the rules I was talking about earlier. And in big italics, there's why are there spiders in heaven? AKA, you'd better have a damn good reason that those spiders are up in the celestial realm. Unless the Spider Queen herself is assaulting the realm, there isn't that good of a reason to have spiders up there. At least in my opinion. Just like if there's a, a beholder in the middle of the ocean. Okay. Why is there a beholder in the ocean? Why are we facing this particular enemy? So, there's a, sorry, gathering my thoughts. Make it make sense. Otherwise, it's really going to pull them out of it. I've seen the suggested encounters in 4th edition, and they're like, yeah, put skeletons and fire salamanders and spiders and all this shit together. And I'm sitting here, I'm like, that is not a well-designed encounter, though. Like, they're going to, if you throw this random pre-done encounter into your mountain, the players are going to wonder, where the fuck did the skeletons come from? So try to not do that. Make it challenging, but don't make it a death trap. The players want something to push against, not something to fall on top of them. If they're dying or they're going down every few sessions, it might be time to pull your punch a little bit, to pull it back and look at how you're designing your encounters. Nothing sucks quite as hard as seeing a character that you've worked hard on biting the dust, but make it so that players don't think it's impossible for them to win. Because if they think that, it's just no fun for anybody. So that's, unfortunately, an hour over time, but I am finally done. What did you guys think? Did you find this helpful?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a couple questions I was honestly working out my own, and I think this kind of answered them for me.
Excellent.
Oh, yeah.
It's good. It was very useful. Thank you.
Wisconsin, as my senior, what do you think? He's pretty good.
Yeah, no, I thought it was very excellent. A lot of points that I heartily agree with. Some that I hadn't put quite as much thought into, but after hearing about it, make a lot of sense. Very, very good.
Danny, Four Owns, how do you guys feel about it being fairly new into it?
Yeah, it explained a lot.
I really like the focus on role playing and less on mechanics of,
Yeah, no, that's exactly why I designed it too. Me is I have a distinct view on GMing that it is to tell a story, so I focus less on the system I'm playing and more on what will make the players get involved. Mechanics, like I said, are just a way to keep us from going pew pew pew. No, you didn't get me. So the rules don't matter as much. It's the stories that you get from playing with your friends and playing with cool people that are really what they're talking about. It's not. I guarantee you, I have not met a gamer yet that has walked away from the table and been like, "Damn, dude, I got to roll 2d12 this time. Woo!" They're gonna be like, "Dude, I totally just shot a dragon in the face and walked away." Like, that's what they're gonna be talking about. They're not talking about how the mechanics work. So,
Right.
yeah. And do you guys have any questions?
I agree with that. I think there can be an element of fun to system mastery, like just understanding little quirks and but at the same time, I think the most important thing is the role play, is the story you're telling. If it's just dice rolling, it's a little less meaningful, at least to me. I know.
I agree.
Well, talking from a purely mechanical standpoint, role-playing is the hardest part of GMing. The mechanics will come with time, and in addition to that, you have the GM plus the players to deal with the mechanics. You only have the GM to worry about this sort of stuff, the RP sort of stuff, the unwritten rules in the GM handbook, so to say. This is definitely the hardest part of running a good game. Just like I know you touched on with the 2-minute rule mechanics, the rule I've always lived by, and I was so glad to see that they actually put it in 5th edition, is advantage and disadvantage. If you're not familiar with that, in 5th edition they have what's called advantage and disadvantage. If you think, as the GM, the players are an advantage, you give them advantage. They get a mechanical benefit from that. And at the same time, if you think they are at a disadvantage, you give them a disadvantage, and they have a mechanical benefit from that. In most systems like Shadowrun, you could use a simple +2 dice, -2 dice. It's a very quick, easy thing that can iron out a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, rewarding people for roleplay decisions. Maybe they don't actually have like a concrete benefit that's written down in the book, but you're like, yeah, you're quenching this guy and you got a pistol to his head. I'll give you +4 to hit him with the pistol.
Exactly.
He's right there. You did something pretty cool.
And you can always count on your players, especially in a complex system like Shadowrun. If somebody's playing a mage, like my home group, we just started Shadowrun 5th edition a month ago, and I told them flat up, if you're playing a mage, you are teaching me the magic rules. So you need to learn them as I'm learning them, because I have to learn the whole system as the GM. But we're going to do this in parts. So the mage is learning the magic rules, the rigger's learning the vehicle rules, the decker's learning the matrix rules, and so forth.
Yeah. If you need any help with riggers, that was actually my first character when I pulled it out. It's woo. That was not a smart decision on my part. My first encounter with Shadow Rules, period. I decided to roll a rigger. I don't regret it, but it was definitely a lot harder than it needed to be.
Oh, they're so different from 3rd edition.
Yeah. So, but yeah, any questions? You guys have anything you want to cover while we're at the end here?
What are some specific tips you would give for Shadowrun as a system? Because it is a Shadowrun community.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree.
Primarily that I'm working with right now, and it is a little bit different from D&D in some ways, like the themes and such. But
absolutely,
can you think of anything specifically that you might consider when doing, say, a Shadowrun game versus a D&D game?
Actually, no. I would stick pretty close to these rules. The only thing I think I would add is specifically for these types of encounters, especially since the focus on Shadowrun is implementation. It's planning and implementation. Dungeons and Dragons has a different focus. Dungeons and Dragons is you have the enemy. You want to go meet the enemy, whether that be through diplomacy checks or deceit or I hit it really hard. Those are the main focuses of Dungeons and Dragons. But when you get into Shadowrun, you're committing crimes. So literally it's let's do all the footwork so we don't get our asses put in jail. And then you have the other part of it, which is the implementation of the plan. And my thought has always been when planning runs, come up with 2 or 3 big encounters. What you want, and think of it as planning a story. You want the beginning, middle, and end. The first encounter is going to be with the Johnson. What do you want them to do? What are they going to be told? What are pieces of information that they may be withholding for their own benefit? Things like that. And then you want to come up with 2 or 3 big moments that no matter what happens, in some way, shape, or form, if they're going to do this mission successfully, they're going to run into the guards, the security, things like that. You want to have a rough idea of what this encounter is going to entail. And don't worry about the footwork. And this is going to fly in the face of almost everything anybody has ever told me of this system. Don't worry about the footwork. Don't worry about the basic challenges. Wait until your players come up with a plan. When they come up with a plan to approach your problem, because it's problem solving. It's all the system is. You hand them a problem, they find a way to fix it. In this particular case, with the gratuitous amount of violence. At least depending on your party. So you give them that, and they start cracking at it. And they're like, okay, here's what we want to do. Here's how we're going to do it. And that's when you, as a DM, step back and say, okay, with this plan, what are the logical challenges that they would face? And then you put it in. So no matter what direction they go with it, you always have a solid plan of what they're going to encounter and can correctly match their skills with their challenges, and it will always make a challenging run. That's my specific. So if you have the 2 or 3 big encounters, including like the crux encounter, like the very end of it, then you will have a good enough system in place that you would be able to ad-lib most of the parts in between. That's my design anyway. Like when I did the Boar's Head Carol at one point. Basically, I hired a whole bunch of Shadowrunners to go into a Mana Storm. Again, let that sink in for a moment. I hired Shadowrunners to go into a Mana Storm.
Yeah.
But it was a fucking awesome run, because what I did was I came up with a set of stages. I said, okay, regardless of who's in the party, they're going to hit this first. And basically, I had like a little pool of events that would happen, like the sky turns to blood, trees grow out and whisper their past to them as they drive by. Shards of glass act as rain. Things like that. I just had a small little pool of events. And as they were driving through, I looked at those things and I said, okay, we're going to use this now. And I threw it up to have them face it. And they did it. Okay, next thing, throw it out. And I linked all of them together, completely improv the whole time. Once they were done with that, okay, I said that's the first stage. Now we go to the second stage. Second stage is going to be them actively tracking down the Eucilian boar, aka the boar that Hercules fought, that is eating energy along their route. So it's trying to go to an anchor point for a ley line, eat it, and then fuck everything up, because the last time a ley line anchor got eaten was the Great San Francisco earthquake that nearly destroyed the whole city. They're like, we can't let that happen. So it's a fucking like 12-story high boar, and they have no idea how to fight it. So the next section was them figuring out how to fight it and taking the few pieces that I had laid out of the key of how to beat it. And they said, okay, we're doing research checks. We're doing, this check and that check. And we're trying to figure out weak points and driving around. And I basically let them do all the footwork. And then if whatever piece I had planned, I say, okay, well, their research matches what I have. And I gave it to them. So it wasn't a specific set of, they have to do this check successfully to figure out this piece of information. It was, I have this information, and I will give it to them if they come up with a check that matches. It would make sense to give them that information.
Yeah, within the context.
Exactly. So obviously, if they're doing a matrix check, they wouldn't figure out, the name, not the names. They wouldn't figure out, somebody's inside of the building unless there was a security camera in there. But if they go and do a visual perception check or an astral perception, they might see the guy. So things like that. Just things like that. And then the last stage was them actually trying to take down the boar. And the way I did it was it got physically brought into the material with a magical relic that I didn't really have to explain. It just did what it did, which was awesome that they didn't ask questions about it. But it brought the whole boar into material. What I didn't tell them, though, is that not only did it bring the boar into material, but it brought everything on the boar into the material. And it had lice. It was a spirit, so therefore it brought lice spirits with it. So the semi-truck that had the tuning rod that would basically force it back into the astral permanently was being attacked by flea spirits off of the boar. And they're like, what the fuck is this shit? I'm like, it's such a simple little nothing. It's a boar. It probably has fleas. Oh my god, that's a bug spirit. Oh, instantly made it a much better run. So just like ask, when you plan it out, just come up with 2 or big stages that you really want them to go through and wait for them to come up with a plan and react to it, and then place challenges in their way. And it'll make it so much easier on your pre-planning, and it'll make it so much easier on how you do what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing I'll work on doing, kind of, I guess, conforming what I've written a little more to the player's actions.
Yep. And it helps too because it's managing that player expectation on the table. So when they make a plan, they have the expectation that this is how they perceive the world. That's their expectation. And when you change your game to fit that, you're matching their expectations, and you can throw wrenches in the way that they didn't expect. And that makes it better for them because they're like, oh shit, we didn't think about this. Let's find a way around it. And it'll, again, make them think laterally, but at the same time, it will engage them and make it that much better. So instead of, designing Fort Knox and coming up with 4 pages of defenses, the matrix security and the security cameras and the guard patrols and, what's in it, what they can find, just wait. Be like, okay, here's Fort Knox. Well, maybe we can charm our way in. Okay. At that point, you can engage your GM brain and be like, okay, well, the secretary is married, so she's not really going to be flirted with. But she may be unhappy in her marriage, and that's something that they can figure out through conversation, And just, take 5 minutes and come up. But there's security cameras. They might catch you. You might want to be disguised. Where's the security? Well, security hosts are normally separate from main hosts, so they're probably on its own little closed circuit. Okay, now we can do that too. So you'd have to actually get into the building and jack into it directly to get into the security network, but the face is going to have to distract it while you do it. And you kind of see where I'm going with that, though. Like,
Yeah.
You're coming up with realistic standpoints that forces everybody in the party to participate.
If you kind of flesh out the world and you flesh out the expectations of what everyone can do, it becomes very easy to come up with challenges
Exactly.
that make sense. And
If you
behind
have
the curtain, it's bull, like you came up with it on the
exactly,
fly.
it's
But
complete
to them,
bullshit.
it seems like you planned it.
Yeah, exactly. And because they don't know that you didn't plan it. All they know is that this challenge oddly suits them, and it makes it interesting. So if you have a face, a decker, and a combat junkie in the party, you want to try and come up with certain scenarios that match all of them, and it's some way, shape, or form keep them involved. So if you have that way you don't plan a whole social run, and then bring the tank with you, and the tank can't do anything. Well, make the tank do something.
I have had a couple runs like that. In character, they were nicknamed car jobs, where you sat in the car.
Sat in the car. I hate those jobs. Make them do something. Oh, shit. Oh, so the tank's in the car, right? Knock, knock, knock. Sure, you realize you're parked illegally, right? Yeah, let me move the car. Shit, I don't have the fucking keys. How am I going to get out of this? Ta-da! That is an instant way to get a tank into the game, is by throwing a wrench in the works. Here's the plan. Here's why the plan isn't going to work.
Some of the most fun can also be throwing players out of their element. Like I know Dagon and I both play the dumb orc headbutters, Hammerhead and Bulldog, and some of the most fun as players and for the whole group is when these two characters are thrown into social situations that are so beyond their capabilities.
Yep. Oh man, the last time I had Suede on a run. Suede is my troll intimidation face. Always dressed in a suit, will never put on armor because it's just part of his personality. And he actually got into combat. And he's a beat stick. Like, he can hit hard. But I knew that if he got into combat, he would have to win it before the other person got a turn. So that's kind of his thing, is just blitz, kill him, get it over with. And my GM knew that and gave us an opportunity to get the jump on the people. And he actually knocked a 40 soak orc's head off with his baseball bat in one hit, which was fucking amazing. It was so cool. Like, I was
actually very hard to do.
Isn't it? Well, we had 3 characters. There were 2 cans of tear gas and a can of narco jet, and we had gotten him before he could get his chemical seal on for his full body armor. So he was fucking, like, he was done. He couldn't see us. There was smoke everywhere. He was crying. And at one point, Suede has a weapon 2 focus, and he has 7 body. So he's hitting for something like 14p of damage on one swing. And then I blitzed it to go first, and then on top of that, I did an exploding roll. So it was pretty impressive, the amount of dice that he got on that one. And the guy's soak was so low because of all the extras we'd put on him from the chemicals. And because of that, he got something like, I think it was anywhere from 25 to 30 points of damage in the first swing, and just fucking knocked his block off. I'm like, yes, I killed a 40 soak. Fuck you. It was great. I was actually standing up and doing a dance behind my desk. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, sounds pretty good. I've had a couple like that. I know. Are you okay with me sharing one?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. I did a run. I think I titled it The Second Time I Died, but it was basically my version of a Sting,
Okay.
where I was going to have the runners meet a Skeevy Johnson, and said Skeevy Johnson was going to be assassinated in the middle of the meet, or attempted to be assassinated by a couple of professional gangers, which is to say it was a gang called the Cutters. They're basically run like a corp, and they're more like a paramilitary organization than they really are a gang.
Okay.
In terms of their training and their capabilities. And I know Bulldog was on this one.
I got shanked.
He got shanked real bad, actually. He was bleeding all over the place.
I almost died.
Yeah. And what kind of made the run... What made it really tense was they did not expect to be attacked, so they didn't have their proper armor on.
Oh.
They didn't have guns. They didn't bring guns with them in the hotel. But the Johnson, being Mr. Skeevy, snuck some guns in. So they had to kind of look around in the middle of being attacked and kind of do that split-second perception. Oh, look, there's a bag. Oh, look, Johnson just pulled out a pistol, but he dropped it because he's a coward. What do I do?
That's awesome. Actually, I really like that because the last sting that I helped plan, I didn't get to be a part of this one, but I helped plan it. The focus of the run for the GM was not on the actual event. The event itself was very simple, and it actually went off really easily. And the best part was none of the players suspected. They just thought they did a really good job. Which again, the GM was perfectly willing to let that sit. And they got to the warehouse to trade it off. And what they had to do was they had to take a card that they were given and put it into a fake ATM and punch in a code. And that would let them, that would put instructions on this ATM of where to drop the bag in the warehouse. Except it didn't. The code let the KE outside know that the Shadowrunners were there with the goods so that they could properly put them on trial. So cue HTR team coming through the far wall and cue them coming in through the windows. Well, shit, now they have to get out. Best part was they were all combat characters. So first thing that got rolled out was all of the Pepper Punch. I think 2 out of the 4 didn't make the check. And they were just sitting there puking all over themselves. And they were not disabled for a long time. But the DM allowed them to make first aid checks to get, the pepper punch out of their eyes and, try and help them up and get them back up on their feet. They only had 1 or 2 rounds worth of stuff to do though. And he was making it clear you guys have to move. So, but he didn't fuck them. He's not oh yeah, KE falls, everybody dies. He didn't do it like that. But he did let them know that they all had the squirt guns with Narcojet in them. That was one of the checks that they make a perception check, see how we can get out. Makes a really high perception check. Oh yeah, you notice that they're carrying Ares super squirts. Oh shit. Now if anybody doesn't know what an Ares super squirt is, it's an amazing little piece of Shadowrun awesomeness for KE, because basically it can take any toxin and turn it into an instant defenseless toxin. Because it turns it into a super soaker. And as soon as it splashes your skin, regardless of what armor it is, it instantly doses you. So they just filled it with Narcojet and started squirting it at people to get them down immediately, because you can't save against it. Your armor counts for shit. So he's the one player who knew what it was oh god damn it, we have to get everybody out right now. And basically they did a series of perception checks and said, okay, here's the 3 ways that you can get out. You can bust down the front door. There's a series of boards that you can get on top of one of the racks and get out one of the windows. But you don't know if there's you don't know if there's something on the other side of the wall to catch you. And it's probably a good story and a half up. Or you can bust past the KE, try and sneak past them, and get into the water, because it was a boat warehouse. Or you can dive into the water and swim away. And of course, the one time that we didn't take anybody that actually had a swimming statistic, they're
This is where
okay,
you get that.
exactly. You do live
At least-
next to a large port. And swimming is probably going to come in handy at some point.
Running and swimming always get at least 1 point, so you don't have to default.
Exactly. So they decided to go up across through the windows, and they actually did a good job of it. The troll actually picked up the human and threw him through one of the windows, because the human was the one that was still incapacitated from the pepper punch. He's like, "There's no way we can drag him. I'm gonna throw him." I'm sorry, what? I'm gonna throw him. Okay. Picks him up with his 8-strength cyber arms and tosses him through the window to get him out of the pepper punch. It was really well, it was a well planned out sting, and they managed to get away. But it really put the fear of God in them, because it was such a sudden surprise, and it incapacitated most of their party. And they're like, God damn it, they actually knew what they were doing. So
Yeah.
you can really make a fearful campaign, even with 40 soak monsters, as long as you keep in mind of what the weak spots actually are.
Yeah, that was partially how I designed my sting, which was, they're going to be in a place where it was a AA security hotel. There's no way bullcrap's going to happen here. The response time's 2 minutes. Who's going to pull crap here? You got to hand in your guns. And the guys that attacked them, they were wearing fine suits and they were using ceramic knives. That's all they had. Because
Damn.
of the location. There was one Street Sam who was a little bit cybered up, who was heavily cybered up, who was using an SMG that
Uh-huh.
could not be detected through metal detectors. That was the only gun.
Oh, okay.
And the only weapons the players had at the start was one of them is a Bushido samurai named what was it, Kahime, and she insisted on bringing her sword in. And of course, they made a big deal out of it. But she said she was going to leave, and the last thing a hotel wants is a potentially successful individual with a very good lifestyle leaving. So they
Yeah.
conceded her sword on cultural grounds. Traditional Japanese. She
Yeah.
wears a kimono, so she was the only one who had a weapon there, and I knew that she would be using that sword in this encounter. So I designed this really tough orc street Sam that would kind of punch back and forth, while the rest of them dealt with the knife wielding assassins who were not quite as tough, but more subtle and a little bit quicker.
There you go.
And it came out very interesting because I nearly killed, I think, 3 of the players on that one. It was just that down to the wire. And how
Yeah.
Kahime nearly died was she stabs this orc through the throat. So I'm thinking, okay, he's going to bleed out. What would he do? He's an orc. He's burly. So he grabs her, pins her to the ground, and then pulls out a grenade. Because he knew he was going to die.
Interesting.
So cue the whole party getting very, very quiet as they realize the next round he's going to trigger this grenade. And she's going to go down with him.
Everybody get the fuck out.
And luckily, and she can't escape because he's much stronger than she is. She's much faster and she's better at hitting, but he's stronger.
Yeah.
And that's what he realized, and that's why he did that,
Oh.
as far as the character goes. But
It was a pretty
they ended up
tense
bricking the
moment.
grenade. It came close, but they bricked the grenade, and that's why she didn't die.
Oh man. And those are the cool moments too. Those are the ones that I remember because it was a challenge. Like
Yes.
it wasn't just them waltzing through the run. It was like, oh shit, we actually had to like fight tooth and nail for what we had.
And even after all that, they save the Johnson, who says, "Fine, I'll just pay you for as soon as he starts getting attacked, he screams out, "I'll pay you if you save me." So of course they do it, and they bring him to the border, and he gives like, "Okay, here's 3,000. The rest of your payments in this location." They go to the drop location. He paid them in stolen drugs.
Damn.
Because Skeevy Johnson,
Yep.
Oh, wow.
it was good.
Very
It was
nice,
one of my
very
favorite
nice.
ones. I'd say on the net.
I'll have to try and run with you guys soon.
How do you generate the stats for NPCs you make on the fly?
Here's an interesting one, and thank you for bringing that up because Dagon,
Lots
this
of
has to do with
theories on that.
there's a good Shadowrun specific thing. Actually, this can apply to a lot of systems. But when I was over at the hub and I was doing Metaplot lead and GM lead for them, I got in some interesting conversations with people. And that's something that came up in one of our arguments was how do we deal with our contacts? Do we fully stat them out? Do we, or enemies even for that reason? Like, how do we provide them a good, something to push against? And something, I had not been playing Shadowrun that long, so I couldn't provide any solid mechanical advice. But Bamps actually told me to use the rule of 4. Actually, I think he called it the slide 4. And what that is that if you want it to be a challenge, make whatever check that they're doing 4 harder. So what that means is if you're trying to punch somebody, right? And you don't have this NPC statted out, enemy, NPC, whatever, and you're going to punch them. If you want to make it difficult, whatever their roll is to counter that punch is going to be 4 extra dice than what the player threw to roll it. That makes
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, that
And
makes
if you want, I've heard about this a little bit.
And then if you want it to be easier, then you roll 4 less than the player did. So it makes it interesting for faces, because this actually really applies to them. They're throwing 20, 25 dice, first impression. If they're facing somebody who is a hardline negotiator who has been doing Johnsoning for years, they're probably going to be rolling 4 more. If it's a fresh Johnson who, is still kind of knows how to negotiate, but it hasn't been doing it a lot, you're probably going to be rolling 4 less. And that just makes it just enough so that it can be a challenge and still kind of go back and forth. And you'll get a better feel for how these dice rolls should go as you GM more. But for the moment, instead of focusing on hard statting a character for them to go up against, use the book's professional rating really closely, and then remember the rule of 4. Or, I'm sorry, the slide 4.
Yep.
Right.
And that makes it a lot easier. Actually, when I pinned LC down and I gave him his punch in the girlfriend, I was throwing something I had originally decided 36 pro rating 6 troops at him for one person to deal with. But I funneled them through a hallway, and I loaded them up all with capsule rounds because their intent wasn't to kill him. Their intent originally was to capture the person he was trying to negotiate for. Once they had captured that person, then they were going to kill Last Call. So they came in, statted out. Instead of in armor, they came in hazmat suits, and they flooded the whole place with pepper gas and used Narcojet capsule rounds, which don't do a lot of damage, but they do enough to make you fear it. And he actually had a really intense time trying to get everybody out because I wasn't focusing on killing him. I was focusing on capturing the people he was with, which completely negated his most powerful statistics because he didn't have any control of what the other people's statistics were. So it made a really intense run, but I scaled it up past his benefits. Like if they hit him, I scaled it up past his, and I used the statistics in the book to give a real challenge for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed DMing that one. I think that one is streamed. That one.
What's the name of that one?
Let me check.
Last call.
No, I didn't pun it. Actually, it was good. I should have punned it. I think that was actually one of the ones that we.
Was that one of like the ones where you kind of hired out on the Runner Hub?
What do you mean?
There was a couple jobs, if I recall, that was Last Call in character. Other GMs were posting jobs for him to do. Dig 2 Graves is one of the names of one of them.
Oh yes,
Like
I was coordinating all of that. Yeah, but no, it wasn't one of those.
Okay.
Dollhouses, Silent Night. It was Silent Night. That was the one. I have that one up on my YouTube channel. I'll link that one here. It's 3 sessions.
All right, 1 karma to whoever.
I
gets
would
on
definitely
to-
like to take a look at that. I know how I kind of approached it is one of my strengths, I would say, at least with Shadowrun, is a pretty fair understanding of system mastery. So I do hard stat all my NPCs, and I hard stat them. Half the reason I do so is the understanding that if I kill a player or if I severely harm a player, I'm able to pull up all the sheets and be like, this is why this happened. This is how I did this. Like, I will pull back the curtain if people want me to. Like, I'll give them that chance. And I know that those NPCs that I attacked the team with, because this was I think I rated it either a 4 or a 4.5, which is a very difficult run, a run where it is not unlikely that someone will be severely harmed. I created basically Shadowrunners from Gen, and that was what they fought. And part of what I did was I informed them these are dual track combatants. They have a stun and a physical track.
I was actually
And they were, because they were full characters, they were like almost foils to the people they were fighting, in a sense. Not quite, but...
I was back in the hub. I was actually coming up with an idea because we had an obscene amount of Prime runners over at the hub that just were not getting runs tailored to them, I guess would say. Like, the people were really kind of scared to pull something on them because people had put so much karma into them. So I was coming up with the idea of an anti-Prime runner team. But it wasn't going to be something where I put them on there and made them face off against the players each time. I was going to make them more powerful than our Prime runners and actually have them work as a team, because one of the biggest things about the hub and the net is that there is no player cohesion. Each run is different and with different people. So it's hard to come up with a cohesive team that relies and supports each other because each character is individualistic and may not be running with the same people. So I came up with the thought of, okay, well, if this is how our Prime Runners act now, if they faced off against a group that truly was made to support each other, instead of facing 4 individualistic Prime Runners, it would be like facing 4, basically the equivalent of one player that had 4 possibilities to him because they'd be working so close. And I didn't get to play it, but it was basically going to be a mercenary group that got out of the military, but they kept their unit. And each of them had a specific role and supported each other through it. And the way I actually tested one or two of them, I was working with Crayon pretty closely and Last Call. And I got 2 of them done. And we tested it against Last Call, and it absolutely demolished him. And it was really kind of scary, like how effective it was.
Yeah.
Just 2 player characters that actually like cooperated. And I was going to have a set of 4 of them basically as professional runners, but security based. So, and it wasn't going to be a let's throw them in to have them fight. It would be a, oh, by the way, you heard the Royal Flush was the security team for this. And they would go, oh, shit, okay, we need to be really careful about what we're doing now. More instead of an antagonistic, hey, go against my players, type thing. It was more of a, the rumors here, we need to be really careful about how we do this now. And it almost worked. I almost got them out. And I was going to do 1 or 2 runs with them and see how the Prime runners reacted to them. But a good point was brought up that and if you got the wrong Prime runners, they would try to go head-to-head with them. I'm like, that wouldn't work well for anybody, though.
I think the way I balanced it out, in a sense, was when I look at all the stats, I think my favorite stat is Edge. To me, Edge is the movie stat.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one thing I would never try to match on the runners. I'd match other things or exceed them, but I'd always try to give them the advantage in Edge.
Yep.
Because I think that's the movie stat. Edge is what, prevents you from getting killed.
I agree. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this up. Does anybody else have any big questions or comments that they want to make?
No.
I'd be interested in seeing this Royal Flush at some point.
I'm
Yes.
definitely trying to get them together, for certain. We'll see what I can do. I don't know if I'll be doing any Prime runs anytime soon. I'm not the biggest fan of Shadowrun, but I might come out of retirement to run a couple Flush runs. Maybe. All right. Well, thanks everybody who's listening and paying attention. I really appreciate it. Everybody out on Twitch, Wisconsin Forums, Dan, Dagon. I really appreciate you guys coming out and listening to me talk for 2 hours. I really hope that everybody walked away with something, because that's the whole point, was to make sure that, maybe you've heard it all before, but I want to try to make sure that DMs that are freshly going into this have had somebody reach out and say, hey, this is how we do things. I know there was a couple people that I talked to that just hadn't, they were pretty off. Like, things that they had set up were unfair. People were getting pissed at them. And when I talked to them, it's simply been because no other DM had taken the time to explain to them certain things, like, hey, you're here to have fun, or don't be bullied at your table, things like that. Nobody had taken the time to explain it to them. So hopefully, if any new DMs are out there watching this, you managed to pick up some of that. I'm always available. Catch me on Skype. Catch me on on ShadowNet. I'm always available to talk shop.
Bye.
Have a good night, everyone.
guys.
Night.